Welcome, everyone, to the latest edition of the West Coast Press Podcast. We are recording this one because we did not get our Friday night space in. There was just too much stuff going on. I didn't get home until about midnight, 12:30. So it was a late night for all of our writers. Our first segment is going to be with my best friend, my co-owner, Chris Jackson,
And the man in my wedding too.
as well.
That stuff that says everything you need to know. That's it right there.
I didn't get best man though, so just so everyone knows, I was not the best man. Um,
Okay, but that also meant because I cared so much that meant less responsibility.
We were talking about this before. This podcast is going to go off the rails. So just a pre-warning, we are going to get to the football. We're going to talk about NorCals. We're going to talk about states. However, this is likely going to veer off the rails a couple times here.
Sports
So
are fun though too. Sports are supposed to be fun,
yeah,
you know.
a fun segment, a fun topic to talk about is what's transpired here Monday morning. It feels like this is almost a first take segment. 12 Bridges, I'm going to put this in quotes, cheated, is what Wilcox is trying to say. They will not appeal, according to
And
what
good,
Chris says.
yeah,
So,
and good for Wilcox, good for Coach Rose, also the athletic director. He knows just, I mean, if you're on that short end of the stick, the last play and stuff, and it could be controversial. And it's like 12 Bridges' coach, Chris being used all class after the game, saying, "Heck, if I were them, I'd be mad too." I mean, that's just the name of the game. Emotions run high, tempers flare. We're all competitive in sports, right? I mean, I could not name you a coach that would be happy in that moment, but I mean, good for Rosa to just say, "Hey, there's no point of appealing this."
yeah. And for those that don't know exactly what transpired, a couple touchdowns were taken off the board for Wilcox due to penalties. And then in the final seconds of the game, there was a delay of game penalty. The ref was standing there holding the ball. I was not at this game, neither was Chris, so it's hard to say exactly why he was there waiting or keeping the play from going. Delay of game was then called, and then the game-winning field goal came up about a couple yards short. So possibly the difference in winning and losing was that delay game. So that is kind of where the controversy stems from. Obviously, a tough loss for Wilcox, but we are almost 100% sure, actually very 100% sure that there was no cheating that happened in terms of the ref being affiliated with 12 Bridges.
Yeah, let's stop dragging this guy's name in the mud. And he knows it now. I mean, it's everywhere on social media. Coach Hogue, well, formerly the coach there, right? An assistant coach. Now he's just watching his son and enjoying the stands. I can confirm Hogue was in the stands during that game with fellow 12 Bridges parents. I can confirm he was enjoying the game with his son after, as he should. That was not him as a ref. I've talked to Coach Hogue. Goodness gracious, how many times since I've moved to Sacramento? Whole bunch of times, been around a whole bunch of times. I could see that there's some similarities between the way those guys look, but for a fact, I'm 100% certain. I'll bet everything I have. I know that that's not him. That there was no cheating. You're always going to get those accusations. There were bad calls both ways. I've been had videos sent from me both ways. You're going to get missed calls. They're human, right? Coaches are human. They're going to have bad calls. We're all going to make mistakes. They're human. My thing is just don't put yourself in that situation at the end where it has to come into the hands of the refs, right? It stinks. If I were Wilcox, I would be mad too. That's human. I bet if 12 Bridges was in that situation as Wilcox, they would be mad too. It's human nature. I'm not gonna get upset about kids getting upset after the game either. They're 16, 17, 18 years old. Adults are mad about it. How can I expect kids to not be mad about it? So you put everything on the line, but that shouldn't take away from Wilcox what you did. CCS champs. They beat Los Gatos earlier this year. You make it to NorCals. A couple years ago, 2021, I remember covering them at state too. So there's nothing, everything after sections is just gravy at that point. It's great to play for NorCal titles in state, but you always check those off. If you win sections, that means you're practicing in December. And how many teams are doing that across America and across the state? Very, very few. So once emotions, tensions kind of settle down, I think they'll be able to look back at this fondly as well. But 12 Burgess deserved it. That's a great program. Chris Bean's an amazing coach. I haven't seen a situation like this where you're a third year varsity program and you're 14 and 0. In the history of football, well, after football started many, many moons ago and schools opens, in the modern era, you're not going to see many things like this.
Yeah, that's something we want to talk about, get away from the first take part of this whole crazy situation here on Monday morning that we're recording this. Just talk about 12 Bridges. We were kind of there at the inception. This is only their second senior class in the history of the school, and now they're heading to a state championship. Just kind of talk about this incredible story and the rise that they've had so quickly now.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Chris Bean, and it's crazy. And Chris Bean's an unbelievable coach. He previously coached at Lincoln. He had never won a playoff game there, and that's not at all a shot at Bean. He just didn't win one of those playoff games. That also just seeding who you play. There's so much that goes into that. He comes to 12 Bridges, and I don't know. I've never seen anything like this. I just wrote in our overreactions piece something about Chris Bean. He's up there among the best in the state at this point in the pantheon of coaching this year because second ever senior class, and after they graduated 18 starters, I believe, from last year's team that started out 12 and 0, was a 2 point try away for beating Casa Roble in the section final last year. And then they move up a division this year, change leagues. What happens? Now they're 14 and 0. I mean, they're dominating opponents. So let's pull this up and look at the margins right now of how much 12 Bridges has dominated. 690 to 228 score. This isn't supposed to happen when you're a third-year varsity program, your second senior class. How in the world do you go 14 and 0? Well, it's the culture. Chris Bean's unbelievable at that. He fosters that family culture. They have their soul retreat before every year. Their assistants do a great job too, but Crispin's got a lot of trust in his assistants. You watch him on the sidelines. He doesn't have a headset. He doesn't have really anything. He's just walking up and down, overseeing everything. And great head coaches trust their assistants to the end and back, right? And he's got that. And he's got the players, the culture, the leadership that's bought in. You've got a running back like Braden Ward who, man, Greg, I can't wait for you to watch him on Saturday at Saddleback. You're going to have a lot of fun watching him. I haven't seen a whole lot of running backs with this contact balance. 9.5 yards a carry, 39 touchdown runs. He's over 3,000 yards from scrimmage because he also has 609 receiving yards this year. Obviously, got to give a lot of kudos to the big boys up front. They've got a great offensive line. Colton Hogue's an awesome junior, a three-star, played both ways last week too. 7 tackles on defense, but you got Raiden Paducah. You've got a whole bunch of different guys up front. And you've got a quarterback that's a dual threat. Connor Flaherty can throw, he can run. Last week, let's look at that box score just to show the efficiency. He's smart too. I mean, this kid's an absolute gamer. 6'3", 6'4", great arm. He should get more opportunities to play at the next level. But 11 of 15, 215 yards passing, ran for another 57 yards on 7 carries. You have a receiver like Isaiah Rodriguez who he's got a really bad shoulder injury. And how he comes up with 4 catches for 141 yards and a touchdown, well, one of his shoulders is, well, essentially gone, right? In terms of just the injury and stuff. I don't know. And last week in the section championship, he had a catch over 2 guys and he got drilled where he somehow makes it in the red zone. I asked him after and he just said it was sheer force of will. Like, I don't care. I'm playing. You got to respect kids like that and programs like that. But 12 Bridges has the defense. They've got the offense. They've got the coaching. It's everything that you want in a program. That's what 12 Bridges is. And they've got great youth programs coming up too. Like I know the junior Raging Rhinos are kind of dominating a lot of levels now too. So they built that thing up quickly. And, there's, I think this is going to be a program that's going to be right at the top for a long, long, long time.
Yeah, and also, what was their Sac Joaquin section division? Just so everyone knows and clarifies, what was that?
Yeah, so they went from D5 last year, right? And they were D6 that first year. They lost by 1 point to Houston, the eventual state champion in the section playoffs, right? A 2 point try away. Last year, another 2 point try away. Heartbreak, but 12 and 0 with that first senior class. Now they're D4, and they're going to keep moving up too, right? Newer school. And you drive through the Sacramento area, right? You drive through Lincoln and Roseville and those cities. What do you keep seeing? New developments, new houses, new apartments being built. And like if I'm a parent, why wouldn't I want to send my kid to some of those schools, especially with the leadership and the coaching and everything else you get in great schools on top of it? It's I'm lost for words at this point. You can see, and if I'm lost for words at this, I think that probably says everything.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole different topic that we could get into at a much later time. Just kind of the changing of dynamics in Northern California, and so. But who also wouldn't want to be a Raging Rhino? I mean, one of the best names in high school sports right now. But
See those hats and those helmets, and I mean, you got a freaking Raging Rhino at midfield on your football field. Like, how sick is that?
Yeah, can we get no disrespect to like Los Gatos and St. Ignatius, all these Wildcats teams, but how many Wildcats and Bulldogs can we have? I like
Yeah.
the uniqueness, you know.
But like, look, like, you know what? Shout out to the city of Lincoln because you've got the Lincoln Fighting
Yeah,
Zebras on one side of town, and you've got the 12 Bridges Raging Rhinos on the other side of town. I mean, talk about a city that understands creativity.
yeah,
No
that
wonder
it
they're winning.
should be much, much more of that. Someone think of the West Coast Press mascot whenever we build a school in 20 years, whenever that might be. Let's move on though to Grant, and just what they have done this year. Not really just this year, what they've done as a program over the last 3 years on the road, three straight times in NorCal title games. They won each and every single time as well, and they're back in a state championship game.
You know, have these guys deserved a home game in NorCal now after 3 years going on the road and winning everywhere they go? El Cerrito, St. Francis, Rockland. I think it's time next year. I'm fairly confident they'll be back. They're going to make a run. They've got coaches that are, many of them are graduates of Grant. It's cool too. You see their hats. A lot of them also have their graduation year on, and it's different, right? It's Grant. It's super cool that they have that. They've got that tradition. Their first year with this coaching staff, you look at it. They didn't win a single game on the field. Now, one of those games became a win, a forfeit, but to go from that to the next year, their second year at the helm with reading those guys to what, win state is unbelievable. Last year they go to state and Fluke Alexander doesn't get rocked at the end of the first half. Who knows what happens in that championship game, right? They still had a freshman quarterback then who's a sophomore now, the backup, who could start most places. I mean, credit to him for what he's done, but he throws a great ball too. But Grant, we can talk about transfers all we want. But yeah, sure. Okay. Brandon Lambert moved in. Sure. Luke Alexander moved in. But how many of those guys were homegrown? The junior Pacers program, and there's transfers everywhere anyway. So who the heck
Yeah,
cares? But
and this
and you don't know everyone's situation. You don't understand school fit, family situations, everything else. It's hard out there, man. It's freaking hard. And you look at it, Kobe Shabazz, Zoe Edwards, a lot of these young guys they have coming up grew up in their junior Pacers program. So they grew up Grant guys for a long, long time. And then credit to guys that move in to Grant for buying in. Like Luke Alexander could have came in and thought, hey, no, I'm the guy. I don't have to buy in. How about you guys buy into me? No, he bought into them. Brandon Lambert, an unbelievable running back who I think you agree with me should probably have more looks,
mhm.
bought in from the start. High character kid, a 3 star. It's like what Wayshawn Parker and Devin Green last year. They bought into Grant immediately. Unbelievable character kids. It's no shock that they're succeeding at the next level, but Grant does it the right way in so many different ways. And I think that sophomore class on top of it, they've got good seniors. They got a quarterback who, I mean, Luke's just stepped up so much these last couple of weeks under pressure too. You're seeing the leadership and everything else, but when you've got their top three receivers are all sophomores. Kobe Shabazz, 1,000 yards. He's got a D1 offer. Zoe Edwards, 6'6". I mean, a freak. 859 receiving yards. He's got 5 offers. Florida offered last week. You've got D'Angelo Knight, another sophomore who I can pretty much say for certainty will play at the next level too. And you've got young guys, old guys on the defense. You've got a San Diego State committed edge rusher. I mean, Grant knows how to build a culture and how to win. They're energetic. They have that perfect balance of fun because they realize these are still kids, right? And that's the way it should be. They've got that balance of let's have some fun, but this is also still a game. Let's execute business like everything else. And I know it's a long spiel, but they go to St. Francis and win and put up 38 points.
Yeah, and you know there was a couple of incredible games on Friday night. I was told Ethan Castles said who was at the game at Grant St. Francis that was the best high school game that he had ever been to. You know, so
He's
I
been to a
mean,
lot of games. Yeah.
he's been to a lot of games. I think he posted the other day he went to 44 games this year. You know, Ethan Castle is a good friend. We're trying to get him on this podcast in a later segment. We'll see if we can make it work before we post this week. But you know, it's just incredible stuff from Grant, what they've been able to do. And to your point, you know, as far as transfers, I think I'm kind of on the lenient side. I don't really care where you play. You know, if it's a better situation for you personally, then it is what it is. There's a lot of schools, and not to say that they're doing anything bad, but bring in plenty of transfers, you know, year after year. So I think it's better for everyone as long as it's a good fit. whether you're moving from away from a Grant or to a Grant or to a Folsom, De La Salle, whatever school program it might be. I think you should be allowed to do that.
Yeah, and people accuse these coaches of recruiting, cheating, this and that. I urge you to go through the schedule of Paul Doherty at Folsom and name me a second where he has an opening in his day. Father, teaches, coaches, trains. How many times are they on the call with college coaches there too? And Grant, I mean, these coaches, I mean, they're locked in 12 months out of the year with everything. And top of being what fathers, sons, uncles, whatever it is, and coaches and leaders of men. It, just go to a better situation. Sometimes a better fits elsewhere. That's what it is. It could be school too. It could be so many different things. It could be just housing. Parent gets a new job somewhere else and they want to move closer. Who
Yeah,
who am I to judge that? I have no basis to judge that.
I completely agree. We go from one, maybe the best high school game ever to the best high school game I've ever seen, I think, in Folsom Pitt. I was there on Friday night, and Chris, you have a unique kind of experience to this one. You were at the game last year in NorCal's, and I got to go to this one this year. That was in Pittsburgh. Folsom takes that 21-0 lead, and I text you. I was like, "Wow!" I just said, "Wow," and you're like, "What's happening?" I was like, and then all of a sudden you went and checked Twitter and saw it's 21-0 early in the second quarter. Like it looked, Rider Lions looked incredible. It looked like Folsom was just going to steamroll. Me and Jake from Cal High Sports, 49ers Cal High Sports, we were like, well, at least it's going to be a quick night. We'll be home early. We were already making plans of what's going to happen after, and hopefully we're going to get out soon. And I was trying to steal their crumble cookies that he had with him as well. But
That sounds good.
yeah, right. Every week I see him, he's got his crumble cookies. I always want to try and steal
They
one
got good flavors this week too. We checked last night. I might have to, maybe I'll pick some up for you guys on the way to state. I'll be nice for the first time.
for the first time ever. But and then Pittsburgh all of a sudden they got grab some momentum. Marley comes back and he has a drive. It's 21-7. They get a stop, and then all of a sudden it's 21-14. And Rider Lions all of a sudden looks a little uncomfortable with all the athletes that Pittsburgh has on their defense. Credit to that Pittsburgh defense. They did an incredible job after that first 14 minutes where they just kind of looked helter skelter. All of a sudden, they figured it out. Their rush lane discipline was nearly perfect the rest of the night, and they made it incredibly difficult on Rider Lions.
You look at Pitt, how much talent do they have too? They had so many stoppers. I think when I was talking with Joe Davidson a few days ago, he was like, Pitt had so many stoppers, and that's probably the perfect way to encapsulate it in so few words and to simplify it right there. How many guys on their defense are going to the next level, and how many more will eventually go? A couple of UCLA bound guys, Boise State, San Diego State, Washington State, youngsters coming up that already have offers. They're explosive, they're strong, they're fast. Their head coach, Charlie Ramirez, what's his background? What was he previously on staff? Defense. He knows probably a million things about defense. When you heard him on just that state, the Zoom, what press conference, I guess you could say the other day. I mean, the amount of concepts and stuff he's got in his head defensively. You watch him coach on the sideline, his attention to detail. I mean, it's no surprise. Right? I saw a lot of people picked Folsom, but Pittsburgh's freaking good. Yeah, I mean,
Pick Folsom.
I picked Pitt this time. I picked Folsom last year. I picked Pitt this time, but I don't think either prediction's a bad one in that matchup.
No,
Both teams brought back a lot. I hope to see this matchup every year. It's just awesome. I think it's both great cultures, so much talent, and it's forming into a really cool rivalry where there's still so much respect too. Like you had mentioned, Tanola Tupou at Folsom. I think I put him in stud star superstars because of what you and so many others have told me. And I saw the video. He's going up to Pitt guys and saying, "Hey, go win it all." Sometimes you just get bested. There's nothing you can do. There's respect, but Pitt's God, how many guys do they have? Then you watch that freshman Kenneth Ward. I think I rewatched his huddle film like 3 times on Friday. Maybe, well, I do have problems. I'm sick in a lot of those ways when it comes to sports. But how fast? He ran a 10.6 900 in eighth grade.
yeah,
Fast.
and it
Yeah.
translates. It translates onto the football field. He can take the top off. He had a little bit of a collision. It looked like he got shaken up and got a busted lip on a potential touchdown catch that was broken up. But I mean, he's caught an incredible touchdown. He has great hands to go along with that speed. A diving touchdown in the back end zone, back corner of the end zone. He's incredible. But then you go to the other side where they have R.J. Mosley. He was the star of the night. Marley
He
had
was
a
in
great
half
night.
your tweets. I kept seeing on the notifications, RJ Mosley, RJ Mosley, RJ Mosley.
He should have had three touchdowns. I will say I think the ref got that one call wrong. It didn't
Yeah.
end up mattering in the end of the game, as Truly Bell ended up catching a touchdown just 2 plays later. But two touchdowns, incredible catches. There was one play on the sideline. He jumps up to get it, and it looks like a DB is just gonna. There's hard hits all over this field. Looks like this was going to be another one. No, Mosley just sheds it. It bounces off of him and goes for another 20 yards. RJ Mosley is an absolute beast, and I was shocked. I was like, wait, he's still only a junior. I mean, he looks like he's already Division 1, ready to go play for Boise State or wherever he ends up going to play for it. He is that level of receiver right now.
It's not going anywhere. But you know what? Credit to their quarterback, Marley Alcantara. He's a senior. Yeah, you probably look at him and you could think he's not that big. He can't throw a football like this. Oh, he throws a good football, and he's been doing this for years. I mean, I was talking with one college coach on the sideline who used to be on the San Jose State staff back when Marley was going into high school. One of their 7-on-7 things, and he was best quarterback. He said that was there when this kid was a young pup out there, and now he's a senior, and he teammates gravitate towards him. He's got that it factor, that leadership that you just can't teach. Either you have it or you don't. He's a winner. Teammates love him. I'm glad he's going to be going somewhere at the next level. He deserves a chance, and he's going to keep winning. He's got a big game against Lincoln of San Diego, who's mightily talented. But I mean, no matter what, I mean, Pitt's put up one unbelievable season, and it's crazy to think with all the history they have. But you also got to look at it too, just the way the playoffs used to be formatted. There used to be an open, then drop the D1. Pitt wins. This is going to be their first ever state title, and they've had so many great teams. They're the last team in the NCS to beat De La Salle back in the early 90s when my parents actually
9-2.
moved to California that year. So that shows you how long ago that was. But they've come so close, and they've had a lot of great teams. Victor Galley is the longtime head coach. Charlie Ramirez now, who, like Galley said, he literally probably bleeds black and orange. That he's a Pitt guy through and through, and Pitt's going to be here next year, and they're going to be there the year after that, and the year after that.
Yeah. And one day, my prediction that I made back in 2020 will come true. Then they will beat De La Salle. Hard to say when that will be, but at one day I will claim I was right, even if it comes 20 years in
Hey,
20.
no shame in losing to De La Salle.
So I will say this as far as Marley, Division 1 arm talent. I mean,
Yeah,
just high level
no
Division 1.
question.
It's no question at all. But like you said, it's great that he gets a chance to play at the next level, and he's going to continue his playing career because he is just an incredible football player. And then as far as Pitt and that culture, Victor Galley is still on the sidelines. Like he's still there helping out. He's still much a part of that team. Charlie Ramirez has, not really transformed, but he's continued on what Galley created in that Pitt culture and that community. It's just there's something special about Pittsburgh. You go there and you kind of talk to some of the people that are a part of that, and it's a special thing that they have gone.
It's super difficult to be the guy that replaces a legend, right? We talk about what do you have to do to replace Nick Saban or Bob Ladouceur back in the day at De La Salle when he retired a decade ago and stepped away. All these coaches, and to be able to keep that going is as hard as it gets. It's even harder to stay at the top. I mean, it's hard enough to get to the top, but to stay at the top and keep climbing and climbing from there is, I mean, Charlie Ramirez deserves a lot of credit for that. And you watch the way he coaches. I mean, I remember even when they lost to Folsom last year, I think I was texting even a lot of other people like, I'm really impressed with this guy. That was a slam dunk hire. I'd want to play for him too.
Yeah.
I'll just say it. I mean, he does a great job and assignment sound, disciplined, so many things that makes that a winning football program and culture on and off the field.
Yeah, it's incredible what they've done. We haven't even got to the games that you were at this weekend. I know you want to get into Vanden. You've seen them a couple times already this year. You just kept on texting me on Saturday night, Vanden, let's go Vanden. It's an incredible story. It's another program that they just continue to win. They find ways to do it. Also a new coach, in the recent couple of years, but somehow they continue the train rolling.
Yeah, Mike Clark's a genius. I want to say when you listen to him talk shop and talk football, I felt bad on that Zoom CIF Sunday because some other reporters had questions. I just asked him a couple of questions, and I think each answer was 10 minutes because he goes into every little minute point there is. And he's coached in college. He was there with Vinciana, Texas, not staff NFL, college, everything else, and he was on the St. Ignatius staff previously, now leading Vanden. I mean, a huge win at Pleasant Valley. Why most of us picked against Vanden, I'm not sure. Shout out to James. Shout out to James Delpino for being the one guy that was right about them and St. Vincent de Paul. But it was Vanden should have been up big early. They just didn't execute properly and driving onto the field, just a bad snap, a penalty, that kind of stuff. But I mean, they were moving the football like nobody's business. Kalani McLeod's as good of a quarterback as it gets. I mean, there's the tier of quarterbacks of Ryder Lyons and Robert McDaniel from Houston. No shot at them, but Kalani McLeod should also be right there. If even if he's not at their tier, he's darn near close because of that football he throws. Last week, 22 of 27 for 484 yards and 6 touchdowns in the section championship. And all 5 incompletions were drops. He finally picked up 2 offers this week. I remember one reporter was at the game. He's like, "Where's this kid going?" I'm like, "He's got nothing." He was shocked. Everybody was shocked. And then this past weekend, 28 of 32 for over 460 yards and 4 more touchdowns, and another championship game on the road. And now he's Solano County's all-time leading passer and done it in one less year than the previous record holder. I think of some of the guys that have come through Vanden. The quarterback before him, Trey Dimes, was really freaking good. Won a state title. Threw for a lot of yards. Really smart. I think he broke a lot of their film watching records still. A lot of people have told me that. And then Kalani McLeod's with 6'2", great arm, pulleys, goes through his progressions. Throws as good of a football as I've seen. Back shoulder, over the top. I mean, you had talked about it with me earlier. I think it was a pass to Logan Bailey where the linebacker's right here, the corner's right here, the safety's right here. Slant route. I don't think you could have thrown a better football than that.
Yeah,
Man, that's
just
who he is.
that was one. It just gets over the linebacker's head, but then falls perfectly into the hands of the receiver. You go all the way back to week one in that weird. It was super cold week one.
What was that?
Which was all the way back in August. So you go all the way back to August. I was at that Vanden Consumos Oaks game, and I walked away after a 4 hour game, it seemed like, with cramps and early season penalties. I walked away with, wow, Kalani looks incredible. I mean, just the throws that he makes, the way he does it, the way he controls the offense. We saw it back in week one, just how good he can be. And unfortunately, that's the only time I've gotten to see him this year. I know you've seen him a few times now in the last couple of weeks. It, he's incredible. He's on that level with a Ryder Lyons, and he was the Houston quarterback as well. So, yeah, it's incredible to see what Vanden does back in the state championship game. I will personally apologize. I know you sent me the video of our 7-on-7 guys giving me some crap for picking against them. I will personally apologize. I should not be doing that to our 7-on-7 team.
Hey,
So
it's okay. They had fun with it. That's a good thing.
yeah,
Sometimes people need extra motivation.
yeah,
Yep.
that's what I said. I'm just giving you guys some extra motivation, trying to amp you guys up a little bit more.
Predictions are all fun anyway. They're not serious. Like
Exactly.
you never need to take that stuff seriously. It's just fun.
With that said, to our 7-on-7 guys right now, I'm picking against you guys again. So I'm going with the
So you're
SoCal.
gonna pick against Chris Clark again
I'm going to pick against Chris Clark.
after what he just did.
Yeah.
I remember watching him as a sophomore 2 years ago against Will C. Wood in the game that I think took 4.5 hours. Probably broke records on a Thursday night. Remember him getting 3 interceptions as a sophomore. Now he doesn't really play DB anymore, but the ball skills at receiver too. He had over 150 yards this game, a couple of touchdowns. The first play was a big play touchdown, go route fade ball. He just beat the cornerback off the line with absolute ease. He's a gamer. Logan Bailey, Mr. Reliable, is a gamer. He picked up a couple offers this last week. You've got Caleb Jones. They've got a lot of weapons too. And I know Kalani McLeod would be the first to say, and he has been the first to say this isn't all him. He's humble too. He's got great character. That's another thing about him too that you just can't teach. That's another reason why more schools need to look at him to put in their program. If you have Kalani McLeod, you're better off for it. If you have some of these guys on then you're better off for it too.
Yeah. Um, Look, at this rate, this is going to be a 3 hour podcast. So Chris is going to come back on this podcast and we're going to preview all the state games. At the very tail end of it, we still have James Alpino is going to come on and record his segment here soon. Probably on Tuesday morning. This is likely going to come out on Tuesday night. So, Chris, I will end this segment here. I know there's a ton more to talk about, but let's do that as we get into the previews of the state championship games later on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I can't wait. And this should just show you too how much we love some sports and how much we love some football.
All right. Our next guest is James, our great writer at West Coast Preps. He was at quite a few games this year. He was at a couple games this past weekend as well. James, first off, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Excited to be getting ready to head down to Los Angeles for some great football this weekend at state championships. It's been a great year in the region for football with some great teams going down there to represent the Bay.
Yeah, it has certainly been great. I believe this is the first time you've ever been on that West Coast Preps podcast, right? You've been on the Spaces, but is this your first podcast?
This is my first podcast. I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk about some great games and some great teams from over the weekend.
Awesome. Well, let's just get right into it. One of the best stories of the year is American Canyon. Had a great start to the season, had a little bit of a small lull in there, but have picked it right up during the postseason as well. You've been to their past couple games. Just kind of talk about how this season has become so legendary for them.
Yeah, they're heading down to their first state championship game with a big win over Laston. They won 43-20 over the visiting Grizzlies in their first home NorCal playoff game on Saturday night. This was after winning their first NCS championship against their league rival Redwood la last weekend. And yeah, there's just been a whole year of first for that team, and they are fired up to have the opportunity. They feel like that they've had a chip on their shoulder the entire year, with the limited media and the limited coverage that they've gotten. They started out 8-0 for the first time in program history. As you were saying, had a hiccup, lost 2 games in a row to Casa Grande and Redwood, which looking back on it, isn't the worst losses that you can have on a season. Casa Grande is a top 25 team according to us. They ended up winning that Redwood Empire Valley League, and Redwood ended up, meeting them in the NCS championship at the end of the season. So, two looking back on it, as I mentioned, two solid losses. If you take them. I was talking to Mason Harris about this journey that they've been on. He's their senior quarterback, a senior captain, and he was like, "Yeah, we got off to a hot start and then hit a little hiccup during the regular season, at the end of the regular season with those 2 losses. But we really found our momentum again in the NCS playoffs, which has helped them, really gain some great momentum and really help them figure out the style that they want to play entering a state championship now and kind of throughout the playoffs. So with that Lassen game, Lassen is from Susansville, so they're a big physical team. They wanted to come out playing strong, powerful, and American Canyon beat them with their speed because they might be one of the fastest teams, excuse me, overall in the entire region with their speed and their play style. However, American Canyon looks to run the football a little bit more, but due to their speed on the outside and the difference in how Lassen's cornerbacks were trying to play them, American Canyon looked to the passing game more. So entering this game, Mason Harris, the quarterback, had 980 yards, passing yards, and 10 touchdowns entering this game. In this game alone, he threw for 216 yards and 3 touchdowns, which really kind of shows that shift that they went into with the matchup that they saw on the outside against their speedy receivers. Junior Webster Burks, Junior Evan Paras, and Senior Abdul Cates all scored touchdowns on big plays. I believe each touchdown was over 25 yards, each passing touchdown. And then Harris kind of took over with his legs in the second half. In total, he ran for 163 yards and 2 touchdowns as well, on top of the 216 yards and 3 touchdowns. So I think that he's got to be a mention in our West Coast Preps Players of the Week because he definitely showcased what he had throughout the night that night. But As I mentioned, this team is hungry. They are looking to prove the doubters wrong, and they definitely have built a lot of momentum. And look for them to continue playing with their speed heading into a state championship game and using that to their advantage.
Yeah, just give us maybe a little bit of outlook on what you think they really need to do to go down to LA and come back with a state championship and hoist that trophy.
One thing that they did against Lassen that was really well, I know I talked a lot about their offense, but there's two sides of the game that you have to win. Defensively, it was a lot of bend but don't break with them. Where Lassen, as I mentioned, they looked to play physical. They had two running backs, I believe, who entered that game averaging a combined like 250 yards and have scored, 54 touchdowns on the season. They're Lassen's two running backs. And although they were able to move the football on the ground against American Canyon's defense, American Canyon had two key stops inside the red zone where they forced turnover downs on fourth down stops. And then the score, I believe, was, I want to say 35-21, where American Canyon was set to receive the ball back and Lassen went for an onside kick and recovered it, which kind of felt like a momentum switch in the game. But once again, their defense was able to make the stop, which ended up in an interception. So offensively, they just have to continue using their speed to their best advantage. While defensively, as I mentioned, if you keep making those big plays and those big stops and the big moments, you're going to have a shot to win any game.
Another team that you've seen a couple times this year is Monroe Catholic, and I got to see them one time as well when they went and played Bishop O'Dowd, and they were impressive in that game as well. But just talk about their season and the run that they had and how they got into the state championship game.
They're fun to watch. First off, their offense, they can beat you in so many different ways with the amount of talent. That's a small school, but the amount of talent that they bring in and the way that they use their offensive weapons is just impressive. This was a blowout from the start. I hate to say it like that, but I mean, I don't know how else to put it. It was 35-3 in the first half and an offensive explosion from uh Monroe Catholic and the Mariners offense, specifically with Jeremiah Charles, who threw for three touchdowns in the first half alone. One of them was to his top target, Jalen Arnold, who finished with 64 yards and two touchdowns, and the other two, excuse me, were to senior Jamison Ransburg. Ransburg had the Randy Moss stat, two receptions for 138 yards and two touchdowns, where both of them he just, outpaced the Leland defender and was able to make a move and get into the end zone. So big plays, strong running backs with Jaden Bryan and Peyton Collins, who also both scored in the first half. As I said, they can just beat you in multiple ways. But I want to highlight Jeremiah Charles real quick because man, he has had an unreal playoffs. Starting in the NCS playoffs, he's thrown for 891 yards, 10 touchdowns to only one interception. And the most impressive part about it is that he's completing 82% of his passes. In the last two games against Leland and Ferndale in the NCS Division 7 championship game, he's had two straight games with perfect passer rating, which is unheard of, throwing for 200 yards in each game. So, with him, I was talking to Coach Miner after the game, and he's like, I don't get why he's not getting recruited. He's 6'4", he's got a 4.0 GPA, he's a great kid. He's a leader on our team, and the system's broken. Someone's got to get fired, was his exact quote with him talking about what Jeremiah Charles means to him and what he can bring to a program at the next level. And you're just seeing it on display. He's able to zip the ball to receivers. He's able to hit the deep shot. He limits his turnovers. He's only thrown 5 interceptions on the year, one during this playoff run where they're playing against some of the best teams in Division 7. And he's just been awesome this playoff run, and I can't say enough about how impressive he looked against Leland. Only 11 for 11, 278 yards and 4 touchdowns on the game. Like that's unreal. Another player to look out for on their defense is Lance Mitchell, who led the team in tackles with 10. He has 2 TF tackles for loss and 2 sacks. He's a 3-star recruit according to 24/7 Sports. Showed why he's got an offer to San Jose State.
Yeah, a couple of the guys on that team too is Miles Moore, Jaden Bryant,
Yep.
and Seth Evans. All three of those guys were past 7-on-7 guys for West Coast Preps, and great kids, great football players. It's a team going back to Charles. It's a team that played O'Dowd, was on a winning streak heading into that game, and obviously we know what O'Dowd did, ending their season on a great winning streak and getting into the postseason. And they fought really hard. I was actually really, really impressed with that team, and a little bit surprised that they got pushed down into that Division 7 level, because they played so well
Right.
throughout the season, and just that O'Dowd game alone, they looked really, really impressive. So, but with that being pushed down, kind of leads us into what is this new ranking system in the North Coast section. They changed the rules this year. James, you did a great story on that a couple months ago, just trying to figure out what exactly this rule change is. But it seems to have worked in terms of getting teams into the state championship runs. There's 7 teams that are from the NCS that will be heading down to LA this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a complicated process. I'll tell you that, trying to figure it out, even with talking to NCS Commissioner Pat Crunchake, even talking with him, it was a little, now I had to ask a couple clarifying questions. I had to kind of go over him step by step just to understand the process because it was complicated. But as you mentioned, 7 teams going down from the NCS is the most since 2019, where the NCS brought home 4 state championships during the championship weekend down in Los Angeles. And the competitive play has not only been seen in the NCS playoffs with the amount of great games that we saw compared to seasons earlier where maybe that 1-8 game might have been a blowout, or maybe, you had some blowouts in the semifinals where it seemed like every game was pretty competitive up to the championship, the section championships in those different divisions. But, when you send 7 teams down from a specific uh section, it's always impressive, and it speaks volumes with how the league and how the NCS has kind of shaped this playoff run, or excuse me, this playoff format to have more competitiveness and have teams, be able to play up to where they belong. And it's really shown to kind of be proven. Now, do I think smaller schools got the short end of the stick with this process? 100%. And that's something that they're going to have to look into because there are a lot of great teams that got snubbed from getting into the lower divisions and even into the upper divisions. But, you can't argue with success. And this format has definitely proven to be big for the NCS heading deeper into a state championship run for 7 great programs.
Yeah, it seemed to have worked in what they wanted, more competitive games throughout all of the divisions, throughout all of the rounds. We definitely had seen matchups in previous years where it was like, okay, this is a blowout. It's not really fair to the team. You are right. Some of the smaller teams did get the short end of the stick. It's not a perfect system, but as Chris and we go over in the end of this podcast as well, there is no perfect system.
Yeah.
There is no way to have everyone be happy at all times. So it's very difficult, but for now, year one, it seems like this system was a success.
Let me pitch something to you real quick.
Yeah.
Let me just throw this idea out there. When speaking to a lot of the other reporters and a lot of, other media members, I think one thing that they should definitely look into is have Division 1 just be 4 teams. Just be 4 teams. You have one versus 4 in the Max Preps rankings, which, was what they based their NCS rankings off this season. You have the 1 versus 4, the 2 versus 3, and have that kind of be your own separate open division. And then teams 5 through 13, I think it would be 5 through 12, would be Division 1. Because, although we talked about, hey, we didn't see as many blowouts, that San Marin De La Salle game, Clayton Valley, Pittsburgh games, those games were, not the prettiest games for an NCS playoff game. And it's, San Marin and Clayton Valley are 2 great programs, but when you're facing giants like De La Salle and Pittsburgh on the road, it's tough. So maybe, having that format with that 1-4-2-3 might make that open division a little bit more competitive, where it's not just the top 2 teams going every single year, and we're seeing like a repetitive uh standings and repetitive teams going down representing the Open division.
Yeah, it is very difficult when you have a De La Salle at the top. That's one, was it 32, 33 straight now?
Yeah.
CS titles, right? So it's hard to have competitive equity when there is no real parity at the top there. So
True.
1 through 4, it definitely can work. And I think if you kind of keep that same system and the loser in the championship gets to go down and play for Division 1 championship, I do believe that would be a good system. Because you're right, you get the Clayton Valley and San Marin. San Marin kind of gets the short end of the stick on this one, moving way up compared to the years that they've played in the past. And quite honestly, just a really tough matchup and something that they don't really have a chance at.
Yeah, that I was at that Pittsburgh San Ramon Valley game for the Division 1. If you had that as a semifinal game, whew, I think it would be fun, and I think that it would really shake up, the end of the year kind of predictions, the end of the year uh what am I looking for? The end of the year championship games. I think that it would be kind of a good shakeup for the NCS to consider.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of matchups that you can, plenty of ways that you can do it for sure. One last question for you before we wrap up this segment is, what are you most looking forward to this weekend? Whether it's a game that you're looking forward to, just the experience. What are you most excited for?
Man, that's a good question. Well, I'm excited to see what, we talked about, hey, NCS has had a great run during this NorCal championship weekend last weekend. I'm excited to see what teams like St. Vincent de Paul, Amador Valley do against some of the best teams from Southern California. I'll be covering those two games at Long Beach City College on Friday. So that will be exciting to see. And I'm just excited to get down there, cover some good games, and hopefully see some good football throughout next weekend.
Awesome. Well, you can read all of James's content on westcoastpreps.com. He's putting up great content every single day up there. And make sure you give him a follow on Twitter as well to follow along with all the coverage that's going to be happening down in LA this weekend. Thank you, James.
Hey, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the West Coast Preps podcast, and welcome in Ethan Castle. Ethan, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. One of the few low key days in this super hectic stretch with football ending, basketball starting, a lot of fun stuff going on.
Yeah, the basketball season is full swing. I know you're heading down to Gridley this upcoming weekend as well, which I know you always thoroughly enjoy. So,
best weekend of the year. There are a lot of great tournaments, like the Father Barry Classic at Jesuit is tremendous too. There's so much being played during winter break, but there's only one tournament like this with the combination of elite talent and kids staying with host families on farms and learning how to throw lassos and stuff. So it's a one of a kind experience.
Yeah, nothing quite like that. We did get to see some great football this weekend though, and you went to an incredible game. Chris and I already talked about it a little bit earlier in the podcast, but that Grant St. Francis game it seemed like it was just incredible. So just kind of take me through that game and what exactly happened there.
Yeah, so I have, just looking at my list here, I've been to nearly 400 high school football games over the course of my life, and this has a strong case to be number one, at minimum, top 5. Just considering the back and forth, the amount of talent out there, the storylines, the contrast between the two schools. So final score was 38-30 Grant, but that does not tell anywhere near the full story. I guess just take it in chronological order. Grant punts on their first possession. St. Francis then has a bad snap that costs them about 19 yards, and then an intentional grounding in the end zone. Safety puts Grant up 2-0. Grant drives down on the next drive. I believe it was a Kobe Shabazz touchdown. They go up 9-0. St. Francis drives down and scores 9-7. Trade touchdowns again. It's 16-14. Grant trying to drive and get one last score before halftime, but they stall out at about the St. Francis 25, go into half up just 2, and considering the mistakes St. Francis had made early, spotting them the safety and good field position on the ensuing punt, to go into halftime down just 2, getting the ball, had to feel pretty good. And sure enough, to start the second half, Roman Stechu, good kick return, personal foul at the end of the return. First play from scrimmage, 43-yard Kingston Keana touchdown. St. Francis leads. And they go for 2, which I think was a great call because the difference between being up 4 and 5 is not that significant in a high school game. The difference between being up 5 and 6 is massive when you know that, extra points are no sure thing, as Grant saw the prior week. So they go for 2, they get it. It's 22-16. They actually get a stop and had a chance to go up 25-16. Chose to send out the kicking team on 4th and 3 at the 18. I thought it was the right call. Hindsight, maybe it wasn't, considering the 35-yard field goal missed. Grant comes down and scores to tie it at 22 early in the 4th on a Brandon Lambert touchdown on 4th and 1, where he just had a huge hole up the middle. If Grant wasn't so skilled in the passing game between Luke Alexander and the ridiculous receiver talent, they would have no trouble just grounding and pounding every play because they've got a great line. It's one of the few teams I've seen that's bigger and stronger up front than St. Francis collectively. And yeah, they could just run for 5-6 yards a carry if they wanted, but I get why they go to the air. St. Francis is coming back down, trying to retake the lead. Oh, key detail I left out. So the touchdown ties it at 22. Extra point for the lead, blocked by Jackson Cahoon. Just a ridiculous high effort play, like an I'm not going home tonight play. You want to talk about guys leaving it all out there knowing it could have been their last game. You definitely got that on both ends. St. Francis is driving to try to retake the lead. Kingston runs to the outside. Jeremiah Tuileilo, the San Diego State commit, meets him first. Ezekiel Castix joins him, and Castix ends up stripping it, picking it up, and just running the whole way, 59-yard touchdown for the lead. And all of a sudden, Grant's up 29-22. St. Francis not done. A couple of passes to tight end James Jordan, and then Aaron Knapp with the perfect fade to Grant Regelis. Hard to believe with how well he was throwing that Knapp was playing with a broken finger on his throwing hand. Didn't know this until after the game, apparently until the adrenaline kicked in. He could not throw a spiral.
Wow.
That makes it a 1-point game with, I believe, minute 23 left. They call timeout, talk it over, decide to go for 2. Turns out, actually, Greg Calcagno gave Aaron Knapp 3 choices of what to run on the 2-point play, and Knapp ended up making the simple call to just give it to Motu Keana, the sophomore, kind of hybrid quarterback, fullback, halfback. I guess you could call him I don't know, what's between halfback and fullback? 2/3 back, 3/4 back.
Yeah.
He gets a great hole on the right side from Deion Jackson and Judah Reed. Gets in easily, 30-29. Grant gets the ball back, and I've seen a lot of 2-minute drills. I have never seen a 2-minute drill run by a high school team look like this. This looked like an NFL offense. Just the pace they were getting up to the line at, receivers getting open. It was a 41-yard pass to, I think it was D'Angelo Knight, and then short completion to Shabazz, gets him down to the 26, and then 23-yard pass to Zoe Edwards, tight end, who's just so imposing physically. He's huge. And that puts him down to 3. St. Francis, once again, still not done. Jackson Cahoon, once again, played a brilliant game. He stuffs a run in the backfield for a loss on first down. Incompletions on the next 2 plays, so it's up to a 25-yard field goal. And remember, not only has Cahoon blocked an extra point in this game, Grant missed 3 extra points the prior week. But Jose Romero comes in, nails it, no problem. And then on the ensuing kick return, they try, what Scott Van Pelt would call pitchy woo-woo. End up going backwards. Someone for Grant fell on it, and it wasn't until the next morning that they actually, the refs actually confirmed that it was a touchdown. It had to be either a touchdown or a safety, and it looked like it was one of Julian Bruno or Ezekiel Castix who recovered it. So that's how you got your 38-30 final. But not just an amazing back-and-forth game. The contrast between the private school and the inner-city public school. Grant fans showed out. Honestly, my only complaint was that St. Francis's marching band wasn't there because the Grant band was there and they were awesome. If you've never seen them before, not quite a traditional marching band, like a ton of drums and then a couple electronic keyboards. It makes a really cool sound, and they're just super into it all game. And, they all bust down, and they'll all be busting down to Mission Viejo next week for the 2AA state championship. It was just, and this was my first time seeing Grant football in person. Like, being from the Bay Area and having not seen them, kind of, you have the idea, that they're a historically great program, and that they're from an inner city area. And I was just so impressed, not only with the actual talent and size that they have on display, but how disciplined they are, which kind of bucks the trend that you always think of when people think of, inner city football team. You think of, oh, they're really good, but they jump off sides all the time. And, they have to go for two every time because they can't make a proper snap for an extra point. No, these guys are super dialed in and well drilled, run their stuff brilliantly, and they're really fun to watch. And it's so cool to see this program that's like a community institution in an area that, like, you look up Del Paso Heights and you are not going to find many positive headlines. But like every Friday, you can count on a huge crowd watching Grant football, connects people through generations, kids learning discipline, structure, life lessons, having fun with their friends, playing super hard, and just an incredible game. And it's, again, the contrast, whereas St. Francis, was hosting a fundraiser, a holiday boutique, which is just like, that's not the sort of thing you're going to get at a public school.
Yeah.
And to have those two teams against each other in this amazing back and forth game, teams, by the way, with some connections on the roster. There's Tui Ilela cousins on each side, a couple other family connections in there. Total like opposite ends of the socioeconomic spectrum, and these two teams going up against each other in this amazing game that really had everything: big offensive plays, big defensive plays, back and forth. The safety early on, it made it so that it was rarely tied. Scoring wasn't just done in sevens, which I think just adds to the drama. And then somehow we end up tied at 22 off a blocked extra point. I thought really well coached game both ways, between clock management, deciding when to go for two versus kick an extra point, all of that. Just, you could not have asked for a better game. And this is one that I'm going to rank up there with like best games I've ever seen. And it's going to be hard to top. And in a stadium that's hosted so many great games, this is way up there among the best of them. This was just so cool from start to finish.
Yeah, it's truly incredible what Grant has done. This is now their third straight championship or state championship appearance. All three games as well, they have been on the road. They have been on the road for each of the past two NorCal games, and then obviously they go to St. Francis and win this past rendition of the NorCal championship game. Somehow they just find a way. It's an incredible program. Like you said, with the city that they're in and just kind of the circumstances they're in, what they're able to do with that is just, it's been truly something else. So it's great to see and what a game it was. It seems like every single week they've had something crazy happen, and somehow they find a way to pull it out.
Also, for St. Francis, they are no stranger to playoff heartbreak. I think there was a sense among this St. Francis team, obviously disappointed that the season comes to an end, but like they could all appreciate, like, we just played in an unbelievable game and sucks to be on the wrong end of it, but just tremendously compelling and exciting to be a part of. And like, no way you'd rather go out than being in a battle like that against a team that, on paper, Grant was favored pretty heavily. And St. Francis, normally they're the bigger, stronger team up front. They were probably outsized a few times tonight or Friday night, which was very rare. And they, despite being at home, probably were the underdogs in this game and really gave them everything they had.
Yeah, and you look at St. Francis's season, you throw out that De La Salle game, all of their losses were close, competitive losses. And, you see a couple bounces go in different directions. It could certainly be them in a championship game in LA this weekend. But you're also at another game. You're at the SHP Somerville game on Saturday. Maybe you want to kind of run into that as well and just how Somerville pulled that one out.
Yeah, so going in, the perception that I had and that I think a lot of people had was like, yes, SHP and Somerville similarly ranked. This was the 6A NorCal final, but it seemed like SHP might have been underseeded, and there was a definite gap in strength of schedule between the two teams. And I thought that that was going to be a huge advantage for SHP throughout. And, you look at historical trends generally when you have evenly matched teams where the big difference is in strength of schedule, the team that's played the stronger schedule wins and usually wins pretty comfortably. And that's what I thought we were on the way for early. Somerville punts on their first possession. SHP comes down and scores right away. They force another punt. And then all of a sudden, SHP kind of came undone at the hinges, and Somerville took advantage of every opportunity. They turned 3 turnovers into 21 points. They capitalized on short fields again and again. Only one Somerville scoring drive started on their own side of the field. And that's not to say that Somerville didn't deserve to win this game. It was, yes, SHP was uncharacteristically sloppy, but every opportunity they gave Somerville, they cashed in almost immediately. Just did an incredible job taking advantage. QB Bryce Leveros was as good as advertised. He's the primary rusher, despite being the QB. He went 31 carries, 108 yards, and he can throw it too. Let me pull up, got the stats right here. 10 of 11 passing for 98 yards and a touchdown. Loved his best receiver, Luke Larson, who was also very good defensively. And Somerville was just really locked in on how to defend the fly sweep, because Calaveras, who they had lost to and ended up splitting the league championship with, their only loss of the year, runs a very similar offense. So they knew exactly who was keyed in on which guy, and they were very much ready for it and just did a great job. Pulled ahead going into halftime. Believe it was 21-7. Was it 14-7 or 21-7? I got to check. It's all a blur, honestly. I think it was 21-7 going into the half, with SHP receiving to start the second half. And then they end up punting, except punter's knee is down on a low snap, gives Somerville another short field, and they make it 28-7. Gators finally run off scoring drive after that. They did a good job running Sacha Bamdat on sweeps. Cut it to 28-13, missed the extra point, and then they try to jump on him with an early onside kick. Totally understandable, especially in a run-heavy game where, you have less time than the clock makes it look like, because both teams are going to be able to burn clock when needed. And Somerville's Kyle Hamilton, maybe the second best Kyle Hamilton play in football, reads the onside kick, brings it down to the 32, and they score again, 35-13. Then SHP receives the kickoff and calls for a trick play. Jack Barton, I don't know if it's technically a wide receiver pass or a tight end pass, but he throws it to McKinley Palmer. Palmer takes it in. 2-point conversion good, 35-21. Somerville recovers another onside kick, scores on another short field. SHP runs another wide receiver pass, this one from Wyatt Staley to McKinley Palmer. And they cut it to 42-28. Then Somerville takes advantage of another onside kick recovery by Malachi Fromm. They have a short field, a personal foul. Instead of 4th and 2, gives them first down. They end up kicking a 24-yard field goal with about 4 minutes left. That makes it a 3-score game, 45-28. And that's your final. Their kicker, Bryson Benitez, recently converted from soccer, really solid, knocked through all 6 of his extra points and the field goal. I think all but a couple of his kickoffs were touchbacks, and one of those was because it was kicking off from the 25 after a penalty. And this Somerville team is just very Chris Jackson coded in terms of I know the type of football Chris likes. Small towns, a unique offense. Everyone plays both ways. 11 hats to the ball defense, and that's exactly how they played. And it was just super fun to watch these kids that were, outsized in a few positions. Both teams have a lot of guys playing both ways, but this Somerville team small roster, super impressive. Really liked what they did. And, their coach said after they represented the Mountains well. And I think they definitely did. And just to acclimate to a team that's played against, Los Gatos and Wilcox, played that type of schedule and beat them convincingly is such a great testament to what Somerville has done. And it's super cool, not only for the small town public school to beat the private school, but for one that hasn't had success at the section championship and state championship levels to have this opportunity. I know they're going to cherish every bit of it next week. So they were super entertaining and beat a team that had been one of the most improved, like from kind of the 3/4 mark of the season on in SHP.
Yeah, SHP definitely, they were starting to go on a run there at the end of the season. Seemed like they figured something out late in the season. Like you said, super battle tested. A great job by Somerville. And you are right, that is a Chris Jackson type team, without a doubt. So we did go through previews here at the end of this podcast. You'll hear kind of a quick preview of all the games that will be happening this Saturday. But what is maybe some games that you're looking forward to, just kind of seeing the final score? I know you'll be at Gridley, but maybe just kind of checking out and peeking for a final score.
Pittsburgh plays Lincoln, right?
Correct, yeah.
I think that's going to be awesome. Lincoln coming off their crazy win over Newbury Park. Both those teams have a lot of energy, a lot of spice. I saw Lincoln, Newbury Park got into it pregame. Pitt, one of their players had like an undershirt on that said, "I heart Folsom cheerleaders" when they were playing against Folsom. So that's going to be a great juxtaposition. I don't know much about Edison from Huntington Beach, but I can tell you that their game against Central should be pretty good on Saturday after Central's win over SI. I know you were at that. I heard the Central running back, just ridiculous two-way player, Brandon Smith, right?
Yeah, Brandon Smith, he ended up having 5 touchdowns in that game, 3 rushing, 1 receiving, and then a defensive scoop and score off a sack fumble.
And then Grant against Pacifica. I know Pacifica beat Narbonne, who's made a ton of headlines down south. Pacifica beat McClymonds in a state game. I think that was 2019. So 2 teams with a lot of success at the state level going at it again. Yeah, it was 2019 where Pacifica beat McClymonds. They're from Oxnard. And then I know Frontier from Bakersfield has had a bunch of success. They'll score off with Amador Valley. Vanden against Rio Hondo Prep is really interesting because Rio Hondo Prep, who played a home and home with Kings Academy the last couple of years, school has 70 some boys in it total.
Oh wow, I didn't know that they only had that many kids at their school.
School, and they're going up against bigger schools like every week. Yeah, looks like school total has about 140 students, which would equate to about 70 boys, and they are playing for the 3A title against Vanden. And then also really interested in Carmel in Division 5 AA as the only CCS representative, and I believe the one of just 3 unbeatens in Northern California, along with 12 Bridges and De La Salle.
Yes, that is correct.
I don't think one I've left out. I think it's just those teams.
I believe so. Off the top of my head, everyone else has a loss that is still playing at the moment. Yeah, it's kind of surprising. CCS had a ton of great teams this year, and when you kind of look up and down the whole roster of teams, but only one represents CCS in LA this year, and that is Carmel. So a bit of a surprise, just kind of the way the cookies fell this year.
I think they definitely kind of like some of those teams cannibalized each other for sure.
Yeah. No, it was just a lot of good teams at the top that made it difficult for everyone.
And I mean, you look at how many of those teams, whether it be Wilcox or St. Francis or some of these others, came so close to, still playing. There were some teams that lost really tight games in the section playoffs. There were a lot of deserving teams that did not get that far that deserve a lot of credit as well. And also want to take a moment to recognize Balboa for winning their NorCal game over Los Molinos convincingly. And they're going to play against Pioneer from Whittier on Saturday in that 7A title game. For those of you that haven't seen Balboa, running back Joseph Smith is only a sophomore. He's a stud. And his cousin Mackay Smith, who's a junior, monster as well. So, yeah, I'm one of the reasons I'm glad I'm not going down this week is because it would be hard to split time between the three sites because they're, obviously Saddleback gets the highest divisions, but there are high profile, compelling games at every location. And I look forward to just watching them from a distance while I'll be up at Gridley watching some killer basketball.
Yeah. And let me tell you, they're not exactly close to each other. I think
Oh,
each one's about an hour plus from each other. So it does make it difficult. We stay at Disneyland because it's somewhat of a central point, and they're about 45 minutes from there.
that makes sense. Could also do like, somewhere around like Buena Park, kind of on the north end of Orange County. That's Cerritos area.
Yeah.
I also recommend Buena Park because, they have Porto's Cuban Bakery, which anytime in Southern California, that's kind of a must. Also, they have Portillo's, the Chicago hot dog chain.
Yeah.
So, like an authentic Chicago dog or Italian beef, that's the way to go.
Yeah.
You guys, I'm sure they'll take care of you.
Yeah. No, the CIF does a good job of taking care of us for sure. So, but I want to say thank you, Ethan. You were great on the spaces all season long. We definitely appreciate you hopping on and giving us your wealth of knowledge. I'll kind of give you this time to plug your stuff and where to follow you and where to support you.
Yeah, bayprepsinsider.substack.com is my main spot, though I've freelanced for a whole bunch of different places. We're doing some freelance work for you guys moving forward. Twitter at Kassel Media, that's Kassel Media. You'd see me posting mostly high school stuff and then my immaculate grid because I like trying to name really random baseball players. And yeah, looking forward to just seeing what happens this weekend, not only in Gridley, but in all the other big basketball tournaments. And of course, down south with football, there are going to be some awesome stories that slip under the radar that we don't get to like find out about until a week or two later, where like something ridiculous happened that we had no knowledge of. And that's part of the fun of this time of year.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much stuff going on. Like you said, Ethan will be contributing to West Coast Preps as well. We definitely appreciate it. We've been trying to figure out a way to make things work for a while and work together. So excited that Ethan is doing it. But make sure you go follow him on Twitter. Go support his Substack. Ethan does a great job. I believe it's 44 football games for you this year. Was that?
Yeah, which is little lower than I've done some years because we had hardly any Friday afternoons. The AAA playing on Saturdays made it tough to do like a Lincoln or Lowell and then SI double. And there were a couple of Thursdays where the Ravens were playing where I made my choice there,
Yeah, I think we can forgive you. 44 in a season is
44.
So, but thank you, Ethan. I appreciate you hopping on the podcast, and we hope to hear again from you soon.
Yeah, thank you. See you around.
All right. Well, it might have been about an hour in between you guys listening to us, but for us, it's been literally 5 minutes since we recorded the first segment that you guys listened to. But we do want to end this podcast going over all the games that we're about to go watch in LA. So first up is Monroe Catholic versus Lindsay. I will be at this game. It should be a ton of fun. Monroe Catholic has a ton of great players throughout their roster, I should say. And man, it's going to be a fun one. Monroe Catholic in the state championship game.
Yeah, right. What a historic year they've had, too. I mean, Keith Miner's been a great coach everywhere he's been. He was great at NCNL. It's no surprise he moves to Monroe Catholic and works. He's hired the right coaches. He's got a good culture. You've got a quarterback like Jeremiah Charles that was perfect passing the ball last week and 30 touchdowns, 3 interceptions this year. They can run the ball. You got Jaden Bryant. You got Collins. You've got guys that run the ball, can throw. Jalen Arnold, almost 1,500 receiving yards. You've got guys on defense that swarm to the ball. You've got Seth Evans, a junior, who's 122 tackles. You got Fields has 138. You've got Miles Moore, who's a stud. I mean, that's a great freaking program. That's really building football back up to that top spot. Winning their first NCS title, winning NorCal's, going to states. They've got it going, right? I mean, Keith Miner's super fun guy to watch, coach, get to know too. I encourage people to spend time around him. He's super nice, awesome, got a good personality. I mean, it's no surprise that kids play for him and buy into what he does.
Yeah, I'm just going to go selfless plug here. A ton of 7-on-7 West Coast Preps guys are playing in state championship games this weekend. There's a few on Monroe Catholic that used to play for West Coast Preps and is alumni. So it's going to be a fun game. I think I'm going to take Monroe Catholic. We'll put our official predictions out on Thursday, but Monroe Catholic I think has the early edge here in this one, and I think it's going to be a fun weekend for them as they play Friday at 4 p.m. On another side of Friday at 4 p.m., it's St. Vincent de Paul versus Highland. St. Vincent de Paul going for a second straight title in LA. Just what they've built there has been incredible. What they've been able to do is just it's improbable for a school that has 150, 200 kids on campus.
168 enrollment.
It's pretty impressive. So they play at 4 p.m. on Friday, and you saw them play last weekend.
I mean, if you go through it, I don't know what the terminology is. You could say per capita in terms of what city populations, whatever the heck it is. I don't know what you call it per enrollment. I don't know. St. Vincent de Paul's got to have as good of a percentage as any school out there in terms of kids that get scholarships and offers to the next level. And Trent Herzog's a head coach that knows about 50 million things about winning. He was a winning coach at Casa Grande. He's got some of his former players on staff. He's got 3 former head coaches on his staff too. Obviously, he knows how to hire the right way. Coaches love him. You've been around them too, right? It's a great culture. They all love each other. That's why they win ball games. They're going to a second straight state championship game when they won it last year. To be such a small school like that and win, and you've got a quarterback like Gabe Casanova, so I mean, trucked a few guys in this last game against Houston in a 42-14 when he can throw, he can run. It's no wonder he's a 3-star. You've got a running back in Mason Catarelli who I don't know what they fed him. I don't know what was in his pregame meal. I don't know if they put like extra steak in his body. And he's already good. I mean, he's already great, mind you. And then he was running over everybody too. I think he averaged like 12 yards to carry in the second half against Houston in that dominant win. You've got Joseph Edwards Phillips that's run over 20 and a half miles an hour. Ty Nickens, I don't think he lost a single route against Houston. He's super fast. Nevada bounds. You've got a defensive line, CJ Perez. You've got Rob Rooks who's going to Rice. It's almost sad this is the last Rooks family member coming up, right? With how many great players they've had in that family. But he's going to Rice. He's an absolute stud, 6'2", 270, explosive, strong. I mean, geez, the way he shed blockers as well at Houston was unbelievable. But to go down to Houston, already a long enough drive from Petaluma, right, on a Friday. Go down there. At least 3,000 people. What a crowd at Houston. A team that's 13-0, a UCLA signing at quarterback, Air Force commit playing both ways, couple of 6'3", 6'4" receivers to hold them to under 100 passing yards. Now, it did stink because, right, UCLA quarterback Robert McDaniel, he gets hurt. I mean, credit to him for gutting that thing out. I mean, you could say he just limited his mobility, right? And it sucks that that's got to be the way he has to go out in such a storied high school career. But to allow that team to 14 points, one of those touchdowns coming in garbage time and to win with a running clock in effect, who possibly expected that? I sure as heck didn't. I don't think anybody did. St. Vincent de Paul didn't expect to win like that. Of course, they expected to win, but did they expect to put on a running clock on Houston? I doubt that.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I think the biggest question here was last year, I believe it was Meek Mill and CJ Stroud gave some pregame calls. Am I getting that correct?
Oh yeah. I'll have to text Trent and ask that one because it's incredible.
Yeah. Do we get a pregame call? And is it Tom Brady? Can we get a Tom Brady pregame call? Who's the pregame call for a state championship this year?
I bet you Mr. Rooks knows Steph Curry somehow. I mean, and if you meet him too, he's such a smart guy. It's no wonder that he's successful in everything he does. He's smart. He's obviously so personable. His kids are such hard workers too. I mean, high character. Who knows who they can find this time? Heck, maybe they get Tom Brady and Steph Curry at the same time. For all we know, but who knows? For all we know, we get the freaking Pope comes on the call, right? Like it's just and you know what? They deserve it too. They deserve to have this. If you play for state, you deserve anyone you want. Heck, maybe they get CJ Stroud again, which would be heck. I'd love to be in that room. I'd be in awe.
One of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. I will say this about the coaching staff: it's a brotherhood that they have right now, and that brotherhood translates onto the football field. All that coaching staff is super close. They've really become, just a family, and it translates over. And I think that's really the key to success in high school sports. That's what you see a lot. We talked about Pittsburgh earlier, and just the community that they have, right? It's a brotherhood. But let's move on to Amador Valley. They are playing Frontier at 8 p.m. In the same field that St. Vincent de Paul will play on that night. And we didn't get to it earlier. They beat McClymonds. They're down 33-22. And I believe the final score is 44-33, if you can fact check me on that one. But
They scored, what, 22 straight to win that game.
so just an incredible comeback. We all know McClymonds, they've been to state championships before, how much talent they always come in year in, year out. Peters is a great coach at McClymonds, but Tristan Tia and Danny Jones, they've got something special this year.
Yeah, they do. They've been building for this, right? Danny Jones, he's a really cool story. I'll have something this week about it too, asking him some of those questions on over the weekend. But he's a former Amador Valley quarterback and a star there back in the day. He was an assistant under Coach Shearer then after college. He was a national champion quarterback in college. I mean, it's no surprise. The championship winning head coach at his alma mater, which is super cool to think of the coaches that have come through that city that are all class acts. Like Matt Sweeney was an absolute class act at Foothill and a champion football head coach and softball head coach. And he won sometimes when he had no business winning. Sear at Amador Valley was the same way. Absolute class act. And he's got Danny Jones, who's the same way. And again, it goes back to that character piece and culture. Kids want to play for him. Numbers keep going up. In an era where you've seen numbers go down a lot of places in football, Amador Valley goes up. They've had great success at the freshman and JV levels. Those kids that dominated in the E-ball mountain too at those levels. Not just any league, but the E-ball mountain with those programs. To then do what they're doing to win their first ever NCS title. I'm thinking the history at Amador Valley, the guys they've had come through there, for that to be their first NCS title is crazy. Some of those years too, they fortunately had to play De La Salle. That's unfortunate, right? There's no shame in that. It's like if you lose to a modern day in St. John Bosco, there's no shame in that. But they've got the quarterback, Tristan Tia, who's he checks every box. The mechanics, the poise, the arm talent, the accuracy, the footwork, the leadership, the IQ, the character. That's why he's a 3-star. That's why he's going to Oregon State. And Ismail Joanna Susan, awesome running back. Over 7 yards of carry in the championship against McClymonds, 3 touchdowns. You've got Anthony Harrington, Dayton Foley, Vince Majorana. I mean, you've got guys upon guys for a team that's won 10 games. And early on, too, they had a couple of close losses, right? They lost to Downey, who's really prolific in a close game. They lost to Liberty by 6. Then they beat Camp Lejeune by 30. San Ramon Valley was a 1-point loss. Cal High was an overtime game. But those teams that have been in those close games, if you look at it, they understand. They know what it's like. And if you haven't been in a close game in a long time, it's hard to win these weeks. That's what helped Vanden last week, and it didn't help Pleasant Valley because they just kind of rolled through their schedule. Vanden had some close wins, close losses. Amador's had both. And you've got a coach like Danny Jones who we've been to his practices too. Those things are detailed, organized, meticulous. He gets great line play every year. Great defenses. They fly to the football. They're bought in. And I mean, he's a darn freaking good coach. I mean, if you can get through that schedule they play and win 10 games and play for a state title, how awesome is that for the city of Pleasanton too? Right? Like that's freaking cool, right? All the history that's been in football there, and now to get Amador Valley going down to Southern California, they're going to bring people. Amador Valley is going to bring a lot of people. They got a great fan base.
Yeah, as a Granada baseball player, Amador was. I'll admit it, they were my least favorite team ball when we were playing back at Granada High School. But it's incredible what they've done. You go back to another battle-tested team. This is now going to be 4 straight weeks of championship football for Pittsburgh High. Think about it. They play De La Salle in an NCS championship. Because of the rule, they then go to NCS D1 championship against SRV, the NorCal champion against Folsom, and now they have a state championship against Lincoln of San Diego. That's a month straight of preparing for a championship game, which just seems wild to me. But they're here in the state championship looking for their first ever.
This is a team that's played close games too. They had every chance to beat De La Salle. They just didn't, right? But I mean, again, no shame to losing to De La Salle, especially this De La Salle team that's as good as one's been there in the last 10 years. They played St. John Bosco freaking tough earlier this year. Where I was following that score and like, holy crap, this is incredible, right? For them to do that, and you beat Sangamon Valley, you beat Folsom in a crazy game where you come back down 21 nothing. Lincoln of San Diego is a beast too. You just ask Grant when they came up here. Han, athletic, talented, a quarterback that's a four-star whose father played in the NFL. Achilles Smith Jr. is going to be going to Oregon next year. The way they won that game last week, too, I think I sent you the plays, right? But I think a lot of people have seen it. The way they won that game, that throw and that catch, who the kid that caught that touchdown is a sophomore. I mean, the amount of talent that's going to be on that field at Saddleback, too, on Friday night. The Grant game before is going to have so much talent and so much, and then Pitt against Lincoln is going to have an incredible amount of talent, too. So I think we'll see a good amount of college scouts on those sidelines that day. I would say so. I'm very confident in that as we should. But yeah, it's going to be tough. But I wouldn't pick against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's hard to pick against them. If there's any NorCal team, we've seen this over the years. It's hard for a NorCal team in upper divisions to go down to LA and beat some of these SoCal teams, right? Just because of there's some rules differences for sure. It's not necessarily the most even playing field when you're talking about it. And again, that's a whole different subject. But
And we'll have a lot of content on that in the coming weeks too, as that comes, and podcast probably stories about it too. But I mean, it's different, right? And we'll get into that later as well, so we don't take up too much of your time.
but that is it's going to be a fun one. I was looking at Max Preps and I realized I was only looking at the San Francisco Metro teams. There is Grant as well. They play at 4 p.m. at Saddleback. I almost skipped over them. So let's preview Grant and just as they chase what would be their second title in 3 years.
Yeah, so what did I mention in the last segment? They can throw, they can run. Luke Alexander is playing as good a football as anyone in the area right now in terms of, I mean, everything's. I mean, you're seeing him. He was already good, but now he's just vaulted up another step. He's got everything down, the poise. I was so impressed in that Rockland section championship game when they're down late. I see him on the sideline. Cool as can be. He's like, yeah, I got this. It's like when you're watching Kalani McLeod on the sideline, like, yeah, we're fine, right? Picking up his teammates. Like he and Brandon Lambert, the running back, right? I see their kicker just had a tough day, right? It happens. Teenagers, a lot of things, and there's so much that goes into kicking besides just the kicker, the snap, the hold, everything else. And kicker just had a tough day, and then he comes back and it's a game winner, right? That says everything because Grant's got that culture again, right? And the leadership. They've got the athletes on the outside. Their line is wow. Their line's big. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. You just got to watch it. You just got to see them in person. You've seen them in person.
Yeah.
That they got some big boys up front. They got good running backs, talented running back room again, a great quarterback, good players on the outside, really talented defense, good secondary, good linebackers led by JoJo Fotofili. You've got a good D line as well. So I'm not picking against Grant. I mean, heck, maybe it's good for them to pick against them. I don't know, but I think it's kind of silly to pick against Grant at this point. Or we've learned this for 3 years, right? Like they just keep doing it. Send them anywhere, right? I think I've wrote like twice in the last 3 days. Send Grant anywhere you want. They're still gonna win.
Yeah. Yeah. They thoroughly enjoy having that underdog chip on them though.
Yeah.
I think
And
that they've embraced
they
it.
should. They should. And it works too. Like who am I to say? Like who am I? Like it's fun. They have fun with it and they'll let you know, but it's sports. It's fun. It's all fun and games. And heck, if I'm wrong about it, and when we're wrong about it, we'll admit it too, right? Like after St. Vincent de Paul, I call us out on there. I screenshot it and was like, hey, yeah, we were wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though they're far from an underdog, they do enjoy taking that underdog story. But
It
yeah,
works.
I don't think anyone's picking against them.
You should. You really should not. I'm just saying that's just not a smart move to pick against Grant.
The last game that is on Friday night is at Fullerton. It is Carmel as the NorCal representative in that game.
What a big win they had against
One of the
Aqualung. Right?
one of the few undefeated teams left in the state.
Yeah, unbelievable for what they've done. Right, a lot of people think of Carmel. You think of golf, right? You think
Yeah.
going to Pebble Beach, Papios. You think of going to one of the more beautiful places in the world. When you're on those cliffs, it's a sight to behold, and then the golf too. But They play some football, and they've got an Alabama-bound guy on the line, Jackson Lloyd, who is just put on the tape. He's going to play on Sundays. I don't know, a few people tell me that too. I mean, I see why. They've got great line play. They step up. They got that 2 point stop against Akalani's when Akalani scored the touchdown as time expired. They go for two and don't get it. But Carmel's, yeah. Well, if you're undefeated at this point, I don't care who you play, you're doing something right because there's sometimes there's just a day where the ball doesn't bounce your way and you have injuries and stuff. So to get through this and to go undefeated to go to Southern California, I mean, good for them. That's awesome for that community, that city, that school, and everything else.
Yeah, it's a great run by them. Let's move into Saturday's games. There are 3 games at each site on Saturday, so it is a busy day. We are going to do our best to cover as much as possible. On Saturday in Fullerton, we'll start with Balboa, the San Francisco representative.
Coach Velasquez is awesome there. I mean, he's so tough. His players are tough. Gerald Anderson, what a game he had. It felt like every other tweet too. You had mentioned RJ Mosley on Friday. It felt like every other tweet was him. It felt like every other tweet Saturday was Anderson in that game. And they've got a running back and Joseph. I mean, their running back Joseph Smith runs laps over any defense he faces. They were facing the number 10 rusher in America and barely held that offense to anything. Balboa is tough. They can run the football. They've got a great defense. And this time of year, November and December, what wins? Well, exactly what Balboa has.
Yeah. Yep. The next game at Fullerton will be at 3 p.m. Somerville, they took down SHP. They will be the representative in the 6A game.
How about that for their county? Them and Sonora are both going to state. And they put up 45 points at Sacred Heart Prep. They can score. They can do everything. They're battle tested already. They went from all the way out here in the valley out to Atherton on a Saturday afternoon and won a huge game on the road. So yeah, I'm not picking against Somerville. That's like that I learned last week. Why I did, don't ask. I highly regret that now, but I think we learn. You know, you live and learn, and Somerville's gonna. Well, they're gonna have, I would bet, a very good fun trip to Southern California, and I hope, and you hope at that point you get to go to Disneyland, right? But they've done a lot right this year. They've played a great schedule, like I said. When you're a team that's allowed 167 points in 14 games, you're obviously doing something right. And they beat Linden this year 28-7. They beat Hillmar 28-19. They played a really tight game against Calaveras. They beat Ripon Christian, who's always big. They beat Stone Ridge Christian. So this is a team that's, yeah, all I'm going to say is pick them.
Yeah. And we have seen this, you know, as history's shown, the lower divisions, seems like NorCal really dominates those lower divisions. You know, whatever that reason might be, it seems like history repeats itself year after year. And most of the sports too. We talk about it in basketball every year when we're in Sacramento. The lower divisions, that's where NorCal can win a lot of these championships.
Yeah, because we've got a lot of great communities up here too in those divisions, right? Where in some ways it feels like Friday Night Lights. Like I'm telling you, go to a game at Houston, go to a game at Escalon, go to a game at Placer, go to all of these different places. You'll see why. There's tons of little kids in their junior football jerseys looking up to that kid, looking up to that kid. That's their idol. They're getting autographs from them, pictures with them. You
Yeah.
build that from the ground up like a lot of these towns do, and the passion, the pride that communities have. It's different. I mean, you don't get that everywhere.
No, you do not. Another example of this is Arcata. They are in the 6AA game. They'll be playing at 7 p.m. in Fullerton.
Yeah, huge win to go to Winters on the road. When that game, Winters was undefeated. He's got a quarterback that can run, throw. They've got everything else. Yeah, I mean, there's not if you beat Winters, you're obviously doing something right on the road too. That's not an easy trip from Arcata. I don't want to know how long that drive took for them. I can't imagine that was an easy drive. Now, I'm sure it was a lot more fun going back home after winning like they did, but they're good, man. That's another area, another prideful community when it comes to its high school sports. And you look at what they did. They're 13-1. They've won 4 straight. They've outscored opponents 560 to 199. They won 35-14 at Winters. And had 2 interceptions as well. To force interceptions against that team, that quarterback is, I haven't seen a team do that this year.
Yeah. Again, I would say all 5 teams that are playing at Fullerton this upcoming weekend are likely favored in the NorCal direction. Then we move to Long Beach. We already talked about St. Vincent and Amador, who will be playing on Friday. On Saturday, it's American Canyon that's playing. It hasn't happened yet in our life, in the podcast life. We will have already talked to James about American Canyon as he was at their game, but just give us a quick preview of what you think about this game.
Well, Coach Hudson's another guy that's in the running for Coach of the Year, not just the Bay Area, for Northern California. To build what he's done at that program, he has so much passion. He exudes so much great energy. He's got the players too, and he's got them playing their best football yet. It's an amazing story, right, for what American Canyon's done. James has seen them a few times this year, so I don't want to. He could speak about them better than I definitely could. I can't wait to see them on Saturday morning. That's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, all I can say is Coach Hudson. He's going to have that thing going for a long time there.
Yeah, Chris and James will be at Long Beach on Saturday, and they'll be covering all 3 of these games. The next one, where Chris will be writing the story, it's going to be Sonora.
What a battle-tested team that's gone through so much as a community, too. You look at what they've been through. Their head coach's brother passed away in a car accident earlier this season. Just tragic, right? And one of their former teammates passed away not long ago either. To go through any type of loss, doesn't matter the age, is hard, right? And when you're young, to experience that is a different feeling. You should never have to say goodbye to one of your young friends. They've had to go through so much, and they're so tough, battle tested on and off the field. Coach Clifton, he's another one of those guys that just embodies grit, toughness, and winning. And Sonora's played a lot of great games this year. They could have beat Houston. It was a 52-51 game. Maybe that was the best game I've seen this year. I've seen a few really good ones this year, but that's up there where neither team could be stopped. Sonora ran for over 500 yards, and well, there's the name of the game for Sonora. They can run the ball as well as anybody. They've got a fullback in Tommy Sutton who you can chop him up for at least 100 yards every week. And this last week, too, their quarterback, Eli Ingles, can run. He ran for 105 yards, threw for 113 yards. 2 of his 3 completions went for touchdowns. You've got Cash Byington, 2 touchdown runs over 12 yards to carry this last week. But Sonora is playing really well. They're tough. When you play in close games, again, like I said earlier, that translates well. This time of year, it has. They had that win over Bradshaw Christian, who was undefeated in that section championship. I guess every time I see Sonora, it's an unbelievable game, right? They got it that time, 9 seconds left, 4th and goal at the 1-yard line. Eli Ingles keeps it. Everybody thought it was going to go to Sutton. Ingles keeps it, bounces left side, scores game winner. Sonora wins the section crown. But they play football again. That translates to this time of year, and there are a lot of juniors. So I would favor them to be a champion, not just this year, but again next year.
Yeah, if all the dominoes fall correctly, you could definitely be right. We go to probably your favorite team of this postseason, your favorite team to cover at least, Vanden. That will be the nightcap in Long Beach.
Yeah, I'll give up everything for Kalani McLeod to give him what he rightfully deserves, which are more opportunities. Yeah, like we said the previous. I mean, he's as good as it gets at the quarterback spot. He's throwing for over 4,000 yards, and I don't think the production even does it justice. Deep, great coaching staff. You've got an assistant who's a game changer too. Laquan Woods pumps out kids as well as anybody. Look at him at Vanden. Look at Coach Scott Robeson at Folsom as their recruiting coordinator. To have guys like that, I mean, it just breeds success winning at this level, the next level too. Why do you think colleges recruit these schools too as well? It helps out so much to have that on staff. But you've got a head coach in Mike Clark who, well, quite frankly, is a genius. I mean, he can talk football for, I think I texted someone yesterday like 59 straight hours and probably not get tired of it. That's just how much knowledge he has up there about the game and different concepts and everything else. But yeah, Vanden's got the passing attack. They got the line. They've got a great D line too. Junior Jackson off the edge is a stud. The way he shed blockers on Saturday against the big Pleasant Valley team. You have Davion Williams up front who also sheds blockers really well. He's got some offers like Junior Jackson does. He got a secondary that ball hawks to Martin Grace, Demetrius Mance, Jada Marquez Cook. I mean, you go up and down that list, and well, Vanden's the championship program that won state in 2021. They have a chance to go for their second since 2021 this year.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible what they do. One thing about Kalani too, if you guys remember Brady Hutchinson from Akalani's, which was about 4 years ago now, we were saying the same exact things about Brady. He did eventually get a walk-on spot at Oregon State, but Kalani's the new Brady. It seems like just so much talent, great arm strength, just has everything about him. I hope that Kalani gets that opportunity at a Division I level because that's what he deserves. Moving on, though, we have the best 3 games probably on the schedule over at Saddleback on Saturday. I am the lucky one that gets to hang out at Saddleback on Saturday all day. 12 Bridges starts it off at 11:30 in the morning in the Division IIA.
Can't wait to see how many people they bring down too, because they've got fans that travel. They're loud.
Will
They're
Hoagie
raging.
and will Hoagie be there? Will he be reffing the game?
Maybe he'll be a ref. Maybe Jeff decides he's a great ref, right? But now he'll be in the stands enjoying it as he should. And his son's a freaking baller, right? I mean, his son's different. He had something in the summer where he went to a camp one day. I think he drove up that same day to go to another camp or the next day, whatever it was. Picked up some offers. 12 Bridges has everything. I mean, the receiving core. They got a sophomore in Dylan Amos who in the section championship with 2 interceptions and a touchdown. So, I think you get the point. They got great seniors again, but they're going to have more kids that step up in the future. And you've got Chase Woodco on defense, who's a tackling machine, who is just one of the more resilient kids I think I've spoken to as well. I talked about the Sonora kids. Just read his story on our website. Maybe I'll reshare it again this week. Going into a section championship or into a state championship game. I mean, but they've got every piece. They do. I mean, you've got playmakers like Isaiah Rodriguez, Braden Ward's one of the best running backs I've covered. He's going to be up for a lot of awards. All I'm going to say is he's an MVP. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, it's going to be a very tough game for 12 Bridges. Like we said, they were a Division IV school in Sac Joaquin section this year, and they're playing in a 2A championship. So, they're battle tested for sure, and they've been put in a tough bracket. Let's see if they can get it done for NorCal. The next one is Central. I actually got to see Central. I drove down to Fresno when they played St. Ignatius this past weekend. They have the 3:30 p.m. game, which is the Division 1A, and my goodness, their running back, Brandon Smith. I mean, I could go on for probably a half hour about this guy. 5 touchdowns in that game. If you haven't read the story yet, go on westcoastpreps.com and just get the full details of it because, like I said, you could go on for a half hour talking about him. But electric, even when he looked like he was caught in the backfield for a loss or no gain, somehow it was 4 or 5 yard gain. He is the key to that team. They have a young sophomore quarterback that can throw the ball. Reminds me a little bit of Marley, maybe not quite the same arm talent, but on the smaller side, but can get the ball to the outside of the numbers. It's going to be a lot of fun, but that's going to be a great one.
Yeah, I mean, you could speak about them better than anybody. Just seeing them making that trip, and shameless plug, Doghouse Grill.
Yeah, Doghouse Grill. That's basically the main reason I went to Fresno on Saturday was just so I could go get a tri-tip sandwich. If you are the owner of the Doghouse Grill and you're listening, just go ahead and open one here in Livermore. I've been waiting for about 15 years.
Advertising us too. I don't think you'll see anybody advertising more than us. I mean, it's that good.
I will say
I'm making a stop down there. I'm making a stop there on the way down the state on Thursday.
Yeah, for sure. If you want anything, just text Chris. I will put his phone number in the link below. I'm joking.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I will say Central, they're on a vengeance tour. They did not celebrate that NorCal championship at all. Not even hardly cracked a smile did their head coach. He got the trophy, and it was like Nick Saban or when Bill Belichick won the AFC championship, and he just handed the trophy off to, I think it was Robert Kraft on that ceremony. He doesn't care about that. They want that state championship. It's a team that is determined to win a state title. So definitely a focused team. Let's move on, though. I mean, the game that everyone talks about, is it going to be the best game? We assume it's not going to be. But it's a hot topic of just the CIF. It's De La Salle Mater Dei. Does De La Salle have a chance? I I don't want to say no, right? Because any given Sunday, De La Salle has a movie made about them. Does Mater Dei? No, so that's favorite to De La Salle. It's just hard. It's a different sport, unfortunately.
It is. I mean, you look at it. I'm just gonna read you something from earlier this year when Mater Dei played St. John Bosco for the first time. This was back in October, where those two teams combined had 58 players with at least a three-star ranking or Division One offers. I mean, it's a different playing field. It really is. If I'm being honest, some of Mater Dei's best players the last few years have been from where? Northern California.
Yeah.
Their running back is from Northern California. Which goes to show you how good Northern California is. It's just a different playing field. Each section has some different rules. There's all of that stuff as well. Now, if you want to play for Mater Dei, I mean, if you've been there, I mean, what they do, but how it gets you to the next level. Who am I to say no? Like that, but it's just different, right? De La Salle is still the gold standard of Northern California. They've been the gold standard of the state for so long. Right now, though, it's a Mater Dei and a St. John Bosco time. And right now, it's Mater Dei's time. They've got a new head coach this year who used to be the head coach at Long Beach Poly, and everybody loves him. And it's easy to see why when you watch his interviews, right? He's a class act. He's got great discipline there, which some people said kind of lacked at Mater Dei in the past. Slam dunk hire. Mater Dei's. I'm gonna do an official count later this week for previews and stuff because, well, I guarantee you they're gonna have more offers coming out this week in terms of charting that, combining it. Last week at State, it was this, or last year at State, it was the same thing where I had to kind of, where I think Jack and I were adding different offers throughout the week in terms of charting it and stuff for previews and notes and stuff. But it's unfortunately De La Salle's not favored. I saw one projection was a 44-3 final score,
Which,
and you hate to see that.
yeah, which it's a shame that essentially the state championship game was 2 weeks ago when Bosco played Mater Dei.
It is.
We try and hype up as media. You want this last game to be exciting. It's the ultimate end of the season. All eyes are supposed to be on it, but we've seen it with Sarah over the last 3 years when they played Mater Dei or Bosco in this game. And now we see it with De La Salle, who are back in this open division game. It's not fun. The story that Jack wrote last year was incredible. He did a great job of just explaining it.
I'll have to reshare that this week. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that the CIF hasn't figured out a way to get rid of what ends up always being a blowout. Sarah kept it close for a whole 7 minutes. Maybe it was the whole first quarter, if I remember correctly. But they threw literally the kitchen sink just to try and keep it at a 0-0 game for as long as they did. And then the talent takes over. And unfortunately, there's just an abundance of talent at Mater Dei. There's way more depth. And this is to not discredit what De La Salle has done. This is one of the best years, as we said earlier, in like 10 years.
We grew up with great De La Salle teams, and this is one of the better ones I've seen in my lifetime there.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy about this.
And we don't want to discount because it's been a couple weeks since De La Salle has played. There is more than a chance that they can figure out a way to win a championship and somehow shock the world. It just seems unlikely with just the amount of talent that Mater Dei has. So the question really becomes, and I don't think anyone has a solution, what does the CIF need to do to try and make this better, make it work to where your ultimate NorCal champion doesn't have to go and be, I don't want to say embarrassed, but when you look at a final score, you would say it's just not fun. There's no reason to even go down there and play. And at some point, whether it's an Allenbaugh, whether it's a Walsh, a Doherty, a Ramirez, someone has to stand up and say, we're not going to play in this game because it's not fair to our kids.
I mean, I agree. It's the way Walsh handled the last few years was awesome too. He's very thoughtful with his words. He's as creative as a coach as I've seen, as good of a culture builder as I've seen. And if he can't scheme up a way to even make it competitive against modern day, I think that says everything. And that's not for a lack of trying. But when you go to those games and you watch a modern day warm up, you look at them, that's not a high school team. That's a college football team. That's not a high school team. It's not. They come out and they just look different. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster than you at every spot. I mean, they're too deep. Everyone on their too deep is a Division 1 type talent. And you don't have that at these schools. You're not going to have that ever. You don't have that anywhere. Honestly, I don't like it. I'm not the biggest fan of it. Walsh has always handled it with class. Allen Ball's handled it with class. We'll see what he has to say after this game. But leading up, he said, "We have no excuses. We're going out to play a game and to win." I mean, he wasn't saying anything bad about modern day or the rules or anything like that. He's like, "We don't have excuses. It's either we put up or shut up." Maybe he says something different after the game, but I would imagine Allen Ball handles it with no matter how it goes. If they win and shock the world, yeah, it sucks that almost kind of we're talking like it sounds like they're not they have no chance, right? If you just look on paper the rosters, that's probably the way it sounds. But who knows? Maybe they get back to what De La Salle's been, that top spot. You look at their history, betting against their history is probably asinine. I think it's asinine to bet against that history and what they've done. The nation's ever longest ever winning streak, the amount of banners there. I don't think they have room for banners or plaques anymore. I really don't think they have room. We'll see what Allen Ball says after the game. Players say after the game, win or lose. And if they win, it shuts up everything. This talk is moot.
Yeah.
It's the year. It is. But I'm sure they've thought of ideas to maybe change the format, alter it a bit. I just don't know what the right way to do it is. And no matter which way you do it, you're always going to have people mad. You look at it in college football, right? There's always going to be people mad about the format, getting left out, getting put in, whatever it is, or the matchups. I don't have an answer right now. It's something we're going to kind of come together after state and see what an answer could be. But all of this talk could be for literally nothing if De La Salle beats those lines. There are no actual betting lines on high school, but quote unquote, beats the line on the spread and wins this game.
Yeah. And I have been touted as a De La Salle hater as my Pittsburgh predictions over and over again to beat them. I am not a De La Salle hater. Their program is obviously amazing. If anything, it was jealousy as a Granada alumni seeing them get their ass kicked over.
They have an
and over again.
amazing, yeah, they have such an amazing culture. I mean, it's that brotherhood they say, right? Too. It's and you talk to those kids again, they're the nicest people. And Bob Ladouceur was the nicest person as a head coach. You would not ever see him and think this is the greatest high school coach of all time because of the way he conducted himself, the brotherhood. Heck, the guy retired 1 win short of an absolute elite benchmark win total, which says everything. He didn't care about that.
Yeah.
And I don't think Allen Ball does either. They've had great coaches there, and they do it the right way, right? You can accuse De La Salle of cheating, this and that. No, the name De La Salle speaks for itself.
Yeah, there's a history there, obviously, that we know. What is it, up to 34, 33 straight NCS titles? Whatever that number, it's a staggering number. It's older than Chris and I. It started well before we were born.
It started, like I said earlier, like when my parents moved from the East Coast to California. That's when it started. They had just moved here when Pittsburgh was the last NCS team to beat De La Salle.
Yeah, it's truly staggering. And we don't have this conversation to try and discount or disrespect De La Salle in any way. Obviously we're not rooting for a team, but we hope that it's a good game. We hope that the team goes down there and plays well, and we have an exciting end to the 2024 football season. Because that's that at the end of the day, that's what we want as media members. We just want to see good, hard play football.
And we're human too. We hate to see these kids just cry and sob and just not want to leave that field after because of that feeling of heartbreak, and you feel like you've let people down, and in reality you haven't. if you make it this far, it obviously in the moment when you lose the competition, it stings, it sucks. But when you reflect on it, I know for a fact that you can look back on it and be like, hey, I gave everything I got. We won. We made history. This and that. Our names on those banners forever, and the rafters, gym, on the field, whatever it is, and you get those different championship rings. It just the human side. You just hate to see cover that and then look at the other side. It's great when you see the winning, but then you go to the other side of the field, see the losing, and right then and there, I you're not human if that doesn't sting you a little bit, whether you're covering it or not.
Yeah, for sure. I will say this: does Mater Dei have a movie made about them?
No, the book about De La Salle is pretty freaking good too.
Yeah. So at least De La Salle has that heading into this matchup. De La Salle 1 movie, Mater Dei 0. So with that said, it's going to be an incredible weekend. We're heading up on Thursday morning. We're going to be covering all day Friday, all day Saturday. We'll likely do a podcast next week on Monday when we get back home as well, just to try and cover the events and let you guys know how the experience was. Please go to westcoastpreps.com and support us. Chris, is there any other final thoughts that you want to give?
No, I mean, just thank you to everybody for following along this football season. It's been quite the ride, right? I mean, I've had my own stuff of recovering from surgery and all that stuff, and probably were very few days I felt down, kind of dealing with wound care and because of these teams, these schools, these coaches, and it's as fun of the season as it's been. And just because football's coming to an end doesn't mean our football coverage is stopping. I'll tell you that we're gonna have a lot of awards, postseason stuff, all Sacramento, all Bay Area, all NorCal, top 65s in each region, top 100 in NorCal for a long time coming up, and then features and highlighting these kids, and then getting ready for the next year too, and winter sports, spring sports, everything else. So
Yeah.
just because the season's ending doesn't mean anything's actually ending for us.
Yep, and plenty more football. Obviously, we have our 7-on-7 season. We created that team so we can continue our football coverage. Same thing with softball. That's just getting their first season going here in about a month or so. That's the reason we're created. So that way we can give coverage that all these kids deserve, not just in the 3-4 months of their season, but throughout the year as well. So
yeah, I mean, we could see the whole process and see how these kids develop from the off-season months of January to when you hit fall camp in late July, early August in football or softball. Same thing, just different months out of the year, right? But you get to watch them develop from here's how they grew from after that one season to the start of the next.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool to see that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Chris and I, we probably put in this last month probably about 300, 400 hours over the last 4 weeks now. It's a lot of hard work, but it is rewarding.
Yep.
Plenty of energy drinks for Chris and coffee. So it's very rewarding though when we get to have these experiences, do the interviews, and just see these kids smile. It's just so much fun. So
I'm lucky. I'm blessed. My wife's the teacher, so she understands. I've definitely struggled with that because there's a lot of miles that go into it, but I mean, you probably see the way we are on the sidelines and stuff. We have a lot of fun, so it doesn't feel like work more than half the time.
Yeah. So with that said, please go subscribe on westcoastpreps.com. If you want to read a story and you don't have a subscription, you can always use the code 30 days. That's 30, the number 30 with days afterward, all in capital letters. We would rather you guys read the story and then unsubscribe than not read the story at all. So, right, that's the main goal here. But please go to westcoastpreps.com and support us if you can. As well, like I said, I believe Ethan Castle is going to be on this podcast. You'll know already by the time you're listening to this. But go follow all the people that have been on our spaces throughout this incredible football season, and it all culminates down to one final weekend. So thank you everyone for listening to this, what is likely going to be a very, very long podcast, and we really appreciate you. And we look forward to seeing you guys out on the field.
Everyone for state, just listen to this when you're driving down too. I mean, it'll get you through at least to Fresno, probably, right?
I would assume at least to Fresno.
And that part of the drive is probably the worst of it too. Honestly, it kind of feels like it is because then once you hit Bakersfield, you start to kind of right. You hit the Grapevine, you go over, you start to kind of go through the hills, the mountains, then you hit LA, and well, hopefully no traffic.
Yeah, no traffic in LA. That's asking a lot. So
yeah.
But thank you guys. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to having a great weekend. Have a good one, everyone.